BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Caroline Nichols. Good evening. The Prime Minister has said MPs can have a vote on whether to have another Brexit referendum if they back her withdrawal plan. She said the deal, which goes before Parliament next month, was one last chance to deliver on the result of the 2016 referendum. The restaurant business owned by the celebrity chef Jamie Oliver has gone into administration. 1,000 jobs have been lost. Labour has said the government must nationalise British Steel to prevent its collapse, having a devastating impact on Scunthorpe. The European Parliament is to investigate whether Nigel Farage broke rules by accepting £450,000 from the Leave campaigner Aaron Banks. Nan Winton, the first woman to read the BBC television news, has died. She was 93. Theresa May has told MPs they have one last chance to deliver a Brexit agreement. Having secured the support of her cabinet, the Prime Minister set out the bold offer she had promised at the weekend in a speech in central London. Mrs May pledged that MPs would get a vote on whether there should be another referendum, though she strongly opposed the idea, but only if they first approved her EU withdrawal bill, which is expected to come before the Commons in the first week of June. Mrs May also said there would be new guarantees on workers' rights, environmental protections, and a compromise on customs arrangements with the EU. She appealed to MPs to help her find a way forward by backing her new plan.
It is practical, it is responsible, it is deliverable. And right now, it is slipping away from us. We risk losing a great opportunity. This deal is not the final word on our future relationship with the EU. It is a stepping stone to reach that future. A future where the people of the UK determine the road ahead for the country we all love. That is what being an independent nation-state is all about. Those decisions are for the future. What matters now is honouring the result of the referendum and seizing the opportunity that is right before us.
MPs have already rejected the Prime Minister's Brexit deal on 3 occasions. Bringing the withdrawal agreement bill to the Commons next month is widely seen as her last roll of the dice before she leaves office. Our political correspondent Chris Mason considers the detail and tone of her offer.
Theresa May's time in office has been defined by a single, as yet unfulfilled mission: delivering Brexit. Look back over the political landscape of the last 3 years and you see standing out the landmark addresses from a Prime Minister attempting the fiendishly difficult, buffeted by ever stronger headwinds. Add to those speeches at Lancaster House, Mansion House and in Florence. Today, Mrs May had the belligerent, no-nonsense demeanour of a leader who's run out of better ideas and knew this was her last chance. The Prime Minister sought not just to acknowledge the multiple grumbles of her critics, but to co-opt and address them. There will be a new workers' rights bill that, she said, would guarantee employment protections will be no less favourable than in the EU. A new independent Office of Environmental Protection would be set up too. Theresa May acknowledged that the most difficult area, as she put it, was customs and the trade-off between seizing the new opportunities that Brexit presents and the need to protect jobs built on our interconnected relationship with the EU. She accepted that the negotiations between the government and Labour had not resolved this, and so Parliament should work out a solution during the passage of the withdrawal agreement bill. She then addressed the question of another referendum and repeated her opposition to the idea, but added,
to those MPs who want a second referendum to confirm the deal, you need a deal and therefore a withdrawal agreement bill to make it happen. So let it have its second reading and then make your case to Parliament.
It means MPs will have an opportunity, provided by the government, to express a view on another referendum. But most believe there isn't currently a majority in the Commons to endorse another public vote. This was a speech with a valedictory tone that combined the specifics of her last offer with what she saw as the consequences of further indecision.
Look at what this debate is doing to our politics. Extending it for months more, perhaps indefinitely, risks opening the door to a nightmare future of permanently polarised politics. Look around the world and consider the health of democratic politics, and look across the United Kingdom and consider the impact of failing to deliver on the clear instruction of the British people in a lawful referendum.
But beginning now, the brutal numerical popularity test. Among the battalions of the opposed, are there any deserters willing, at the last moment, to offer their support? The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn.
We can't support this bill because it's basically a rehash of what was discussed before, and it doesn't make any fundamental moves on market alignment or the customs union, or indeed protection of rights, but particularly in relation to consumer rights and the quality of the food that we will eat in the future.
The Prime Minister referred directly to the Labour MP Lisa Nandy, long seen as someone who could potentially be persuaded to back her Brexit plan. So, has she been won over?
Offering MPs a vote that may or may not be won just takes us round the same track we've been down before and wastes time. There's going to have to be a stronger offer, I think, if there's going to be any prospect of this bill passing second reading.
Among Conservative Brexiteers, including some who had switched to backing the deal in previous votes, opinion appears to be hardening. The Tory MP Nigel Evans.
We have got a Remain Prime Minister saying to Leavers that we should make compromises towards a Remain Parliament. It's a Brexit in name only.
Speaking after this morning's Cabinet meeting, but before the Prime Minister's speech, the First Minister of Scotland and SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon said her party would maintain its opposition to the plan.
It sounds as if the deal agreed by the Cabinet would take Scotland and the UK out of the European Union, but also out of the single market. And the SNP will not vote for a deal that does that takes us out of the EU and out of the single market, because the consequences of that for Scottish jobs, living standards, the prospect of future generations would be disastrous.
And so tonight, again, the arithmetic looks devilishly difficult for Downing Street. But Theresa May was determined to have one last go. And this is it. Her final pitch.
Our political editor Laura Koonsberg assesses the Prime Minister's prospects of securing the UK's departure from the European Union before she leaves office.
Did the Prime Minister just make it worse? It hardly seems that would have been possible. Her agreement with the EU had been sharply kicked out several times by MPs. She'd promised that she would quit and get out of the way if that brought more support. Then she took the risk of talking to the political enemy to try to get a different deal. But those measures failed, leaving her hope this time to dangle a bauble to each of Parliament's different Brexit tribes in a much more extensive plan of how she'd actually put our departure into law. But even before she started talking, many MPs simply weren't listening. After she finished, public rejections from almost all quarters started to pour in. Of course, the vote itself on this bundle of measures won't be for at least a week, a lifetime in this hyperspeed world. A lot could change. But the diplomatic way of describing the situation tonight, compromising when no one else is interested in consensus, is impossible. The more brutal political interpretation, Theresa May's mishandling of this whole situation has over many, many months pulled her deeper and deeper down into a quagmire of her own creation. An attempt at this stage to ask others for understanding to help her escape is just too late. Far, far too late. Now some Conservative minds are turning to whether she can stay on to have this vote at all.
The restaurant group set up by the celebrity chef Jamie Oliver has gone into administration with the immediate loss of around 1,000 jobs. The group's 22 outlets across England, Scotland and Wales have already closed, almost all of them traded as Jamie's Italian. The administrators, KPMG, will now try to find a buyer for the remaining 3 restaurants that are still open. Our economics correspondent Darshini David reports.
For more than a decade, the Jamie's Italian chain has brought the food of the man once known as the Naked Chef to diners across the UK and beyond. But rising costs, stiff competition and changing eating habits have meant a troubled few years for the business. Jamie Oliver closed several outlets and put up millions of pounds of his own money as part of a restructuring 2 years ago. But he's failed to attract other investors to a business which Stefan Chomka, the editor of Restaurant magazine, says has failed to keep up.
When Jamie's Italian first started, it felt exciting. What's happened in the long term is that the company has failed to innovate, it's failed to kind of modernise its restaurants, and he unfortunately didn't manage to recreate that vibrant persona that he has on TV, into the high streets in his restaurant chains.
Competition in the mid-range dining market has seen many restaurants falter. But analysts say those who get the recipe right, such as Wagamama, The Real Greek, and the pizza chain Franco Manca, are making good money. All but 3 of Jamie Oliver's 25 restaurants will close immediately. Other parts of his business, which include cookery books and product endorsements, remain unaffected. Mr. Oliver expressed his sadness and thanked his staff and suppliers, who he said had put their heart and soul into the business.
Jeremy Corbyn has accused the government of betraying British manufacturing with its obsession with the free market as last-ditch talks continue to try to save British steel from collapse. The company could call in administrators by the end of the day, putting thousands of jobs under threat unless it receives emergency funding to weather what it refers to as Brexit-related issues. Union leaders have argued for British steel to be nationalised. The government insisted that it would leave no stone unturned to support the steel industry. Our business editor Simon Jack has more details.
Administrators are standing by to take control of the UK's second largest steelmaker. The fate of 4,500 direct employees and a further 20,000 in the supply chain depend on the outcome of talks that are still ongoing between the government and British Steel's owners and lenders. Sources close to the company were not optimistic this afternoon that the company would be saved. Greybull Capital bought the Scunthorpe-based company for a nominal £1 in 2016 and revived the British Steel brand to the delight of workers and the government who hope for a new and profitable future. For a while, those hopes